Welcome to the Scottsdale Big Book Study, where we will study the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Today's date is Saturday, May 25th, 2024. My name is Dottie, and I'm a recovered compulsive reader from New Jersey. I will be your host for today's study. Our co-hosts are Harlan G. and Tanya G. If you have any questions during the meeting, please contact either myself or any of the co-hosts by private message in the chat function. The chat function will be disabled until 5 minutes before the question and answer session. Please note that the speaker Harlan G. will be recorded for the duration of the study. However, the question and answer session, which follows, will not be recorded. We ask if you can please make sure to keep your microphone on mute at all times during today's study. And also, please turn off your video if you're exercising, eating, or if you need to step away from your screen for any reason. During the meeting, we will post a link to our 7 tradition. This money goes toward the cost of our Zoom account, the cost of uploading our recordings, and we will also send contributions to our intergroup and WSO. We will post a link to the previous week's recordings. These are available by clicking on the link that will be posted in the chat box. And now I'm very grateful to turn the meeting over to Harlan G.
Thanks, Dottie. Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here. This is our last time at the current time of day. Next week, we go to an earlier time, 7:30 Pacific time. I was going to make it 7, and then somebody said, no, give them another half hour. So we did that. If we have to, we'll back it up another half hour. But let's just see how the 7:30 works. But it was time to stop trying to have a meeting at 1 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern time and noon Central time. It's just too tough of a time for most people to come to a meeting. And so I should have done this 4 years ago when we first started. I just didn't really see it. I just didn't see, I was just imitating what we had done. I was just copying what we had done live. And that was a mistake that I made. So after 4 years, it's time to fix that mistake. And next week, we fix that mistake. So next week, again, 7:30 Pacific time, 10:30 Eastern time. And so govern yourself accordingly, depending upon where you are. We are in the chapter more about alcoholism. What a great chapter this is. Now, the chapter takes a lot of its information from a book that is by Richard Peabody. And Richard Peabody wrote a book that was published in 1930. And in 1930, Richard Peabody had a lot of things about alcoholism that were such Narishkeit, such foolishness. Like if you read books and you exercise or you get another set of friends or other interests, things like that, that your alcoholism would go away. And of course, we know that that's not true. But there were some things that Richard Peabody were onto in this book, The Common Sense of Drinking, that were right on the money. And what the things are these 3 things that he pointed out: that the disease of alcoholism is a permanent condition, that at no time in a person's life does the disease of alcoholism go away. No matter how abstinent I am or for how long I am abstinent, the disease of alcoholism will never leave me. So I'm faced with a choice. And the choice that I'm faced with is I can either live with the disease, I can either die with the disease or I can die from the disease. There's a big difference. I die from the disease means I die a miserable, miserable death. If I die with the disease, that means I've had a good life. One of the things that was very apparent to me as a young man, as a young person, is that I did not want to live in this world. I felt inadequate. I felt very inadequate about being alive. I felt like I was just a spectator of life, that there was really nothing about life that I could enjoy. And I wanted to die desperately. And when I was older, way older than I care to admit. When I was in my 40s, I started going to meetings in Eugene, Oregon, of all places. And I heard somebody say something to me. And he said this to me in different words, but I like my words better, so I'll use my words. The sad fact of this is not that we're going to die. We are all going to die, whether we work these steps or we don't work these steps, whether we are in recovery or we're not in recovery, we are going to die. My time will come, our time will come. But what the measure of a person's life is not how long he lives. It's not the duration, it's the donation. The duration of a person's life is not paramount to how or if they will be remembered. It is the donation. And along the way, if I give enough, I get to have a great life. There are things about my life today that I wish were different. But there are so many things about my life today that I'm grateful to God beyond measure that they are just the way they are. How lucky am I? How lucky am I? I have friends, I have a life, I have a house, I have a car. Tuesday, I'm going to Chicago to be with somebody I am crazy about. And I'm so lucky to have this person in my life. So lucky. And I have my health. I walk 3 miles a day, 6 days a week. I could go on and on. It's not that we're going to die. We work this program with everything that is in us because we want to enjoy the life we have. The saddest words of tongue or pen are these few words, it might have been. I missed out on a lot. I don't want to miss out on any more. I don't want to miss any of the rides. I want to go on every ride in the amusement park. I want to go on every ride. We're going to start on page 36 when we start at the bottom of the page. Thus started one more journey. We're going to start on page 36 once we get started. So Richard Peabody tells us that the disease is permanent. Richard Peabody also pointed out that the disease is progressive. And here's a mistake that I made, and hopefully you won't make. From the time I was a little boy, people would tell me with well-intentioned spirit, if you lose weight, everything will be okay. Just lose the weight and everything will be fine. And I lost a lot of weight. I did. I lost a lot of weight. You know what? Everything wasn't fine because that monster was still inside of me. That monster was still screaming out for food. That monster was still jumping up and down in my head. Eat this, eat that, do this, do that. And I couldn't live in the world any better at a lower weight than I could at a higher weight. My quality of life did not change. And the disease being progressive means exactly this, that as we age, as time passes, the disease will get worse and worse, whether I'm eating or not. That's the thing that don't let that fool you now. I have 25 years of good abstinence. Let me assure you of this. That 25 years of abstinence does not mean that my disease is not remarkably worse than it was 25 years ago. Because no matter what I do, the disease is permanent and it is progressive. It is there and it gets worse over time. What is the third characteristic of the disease that Peabody teaches us that the disease, if untreated, is always fatal. I watched my mother get her leg amputated. I watched my mother go on dialysis. I watched my mother have all kinds of cardiac and respiratory difficulties and diabetes, horrible diabetes, as the result of her obese condition. I watched her die. It didn't even slow me down. It didn't even slow me down. My ego told me that she died and had her leg amputated and was fat because she was stupid and she was crazy. I'm smart. She's not. I'm not crazy. Yeah, right. She is. So somehow I am going to be spared. And by the time my life got further along, I started noticing, even at that age of my 20s, my mom died, I was 22. I was having great difficulties getting in and out of a car. I was having difficulties walking, standing. I was breaking furniture. I was an object of ridicule. My stomach hung down almost to my knees. I was emasculated by this disease. It would be 13 years from the date of my mother's death until I would go on a date with a girl. 13 more years. My mother died when I was 22. I went on my first date with a girl when I was 35. There are things today I pay the price with all my recovery, with all the meetings I've been to, and I have been to thousands and thousands of meetings of Overeaters Anonymous. We never heard of Zoom or a phone meeting. Never. When you went to a meeting, you went to the meeting. There was none of this. So I had to physically go. I went to at least one meeting every day, and it was very common for me on Saturdays and Sundays and holidays to go to several. It would be Saturday night, and my friends would be at some of the bars along Sheridan Road around Loyola University, and they'd be dancing with girls or doing what they were doing, and I'm sitting in the basement of a funeral home listening to our primary purpose is to, anonymity is to find, I'd be down at 5 blocks away, 5 minutes away. I'd be at a meeting in the basement of an old funeral home, and they'd be at a bar with girls. Well, that was my lot in life. I missed out on a lot, but I've got so much in return. So again, just to review, Peabody teaches us that the disease is permanent, progressive, and if untreated, it is always fatal. These are very, very important things to remember, and this chapter is going to illustrate those things beautifully. So those are very important things because they can save your life. Don't think that because you've lost your weight, that now you have a license to go back to eat the way you used to. You're going to find out in a very quick fashion that your weight is not going to come on to the point where it was. You're going to gain more than you have ever weighed in your entire life because the disease progressed. It progresses because we age, different things. It's very important. Permanent, progressive, and if untreated, fatal. Or as my friend in Oklahoma says, permanent, progressive, and fatal, because he likes to do the 3 Ps. And the thing about Peabody is his book, The Common Sense of Drinking, was so important to this chapter that Bill Wilson's copy of The Common Sense of Drinking is on display at the AA archives in New York City as we meet here this morning. Very important. Let's go to the bottom of page 36, and we have just finished the story of our first example is Jim. And Jim is the guy who put the whiskey in the milk thinking that he could get away with putting the whiskey in the milk. And we find out, No, he can't. No, he can't. Very, very important. Okay, let's go to the bottom of 36. Thus started one more journey to the asylum for Jim. Here was the threat of commitment, the loss of family and position, to say nothing of that intense mental and physical suffering which drinking always caused him. Now, the key word is always, not sometimes, not mostly, not most of the time, not any of those adjectives. Always is very important. The mental and physical suffering which drinking always caused him. And if something always causes me pain, I would be quite insane to do it. But yet, there was something that that food did for me, not to me, for me, that nothing else could do for me. When that food was in my system, when I had that first Chips Ahoy, when I had that first Ritz cracker or that first piece of pizza, the world was a beautiful, wonderful, harmonious place. What a world it was for about 9 seconds. Everything I have ever wanted was mine. Everything I have ever wanted was mine for the asking. No effort required at all. It made me feel just exactly how I wanted to feel. The only problem is it only lasted about 9 seconds, and then that feeling went away. Let's keep going. This is in italics, must be important. He had much knowledge about himself as an alcoholic. What knowledge did he have? On the previous page, 34, we learn that the group of Alcoholics Anonymous taught him what they knew of alcoholism, step 1, and the answer they had found, step 2, and he had made a beginning, which is step 3. So he had, he had much knowledge about himself as an alcoholic, yet all reasons for not drinking were easily pushed aside in favor of the foolish idea that he could take whiskey if only he mixed it with milk. How insane am I to keep doing to myself what had hurt me every single time, and yet I would convince myself this time it's going to be okay. This time, those Doritos, those potato chips, the shoestring potato chips, I don't even know if they make those anymore. But when I was a little boy, they used to have Jay's shoestring potato chips in Chicago. And they were my favorites, the shoestring potato chips. Oh, I love those. And in Chicago, we had Jay's potato chips. And they used to have a commercial. I don't think Jay's was sold anywhere but Chicago. But anyway, they used to have a commercial. Jay's, you can't eat just one of them. And boy, how true that was for me. I could not eat one potato chip. There was no way I could do that. No possible way. But it's insanity. Let's keep going. Easily pushed aside in favor of the foolish idea that he could take whiskey if only he mixed it with milk. Whatever the precise definition of the word may be, we call this plain insanity. How can such a lack of proportion of the ability to think straight be called anything else? Sanity is wholeness of mind, and insanity is partial mind, not in my right mind. My elevator doesn't go to the top floor. Why would anybody look at food and want to eat it, knowing the pain and the torture that it caused me? I was a laughing stock. I was an object of ridicule. And yet, you put a piece of pizza in front of me, you put a piece of whatever in front of me, and there was no way that I could resist it. Because that pizza, that food, that potato chip, that candy bar, whatever, was doing something for me that nothing else could do. When I was a little boy, there was commercials called Calgon, Take Me Away. And it was for dishwashing detergent. They used to put it in their dishwashing thing. Well, they'd say, Calgon, take me away. Doritos, Fritos, pizza, take me away. Take me away from the pain and the ennui and the fear and the torturous hell of this world that I saw with my sick mind. I looked around and I saw people, and they seemed so together. And I did not feel what it looked like they were feeling. I felt inadequate. I didn't dare to dream. I didn't dare to aspire. I didn't dare to think that I could have a good life too. I saw them as being lucky and fortunate, and I saw myself as being unlucky and unfortunate. The bottom line is that I needed God's help, and I sought things in this world to help me, and they're not here. The help I need must come from a higher power. Nothing of this earth caused me to have this disease. Nothing of this earth is going to help me. I need God's help. Let's continue. We're on page 37. You may think this is an extreme case. To us, it is not far-fetched. For this kind of thinking has been characteristic of every single one of us. We have sometimes reflected more than Jim did upon the consequences, but there was always the curious mental phenomenon. Why does he call it a mental phenomenon? Because he doesn't understand it himself. In the big book, he calls it a mental twist, strange mental twist, peculiar mental twist. He calls it a mental phenomenon. And in the 12 and 12, he will call it the mental obsession. What is the mental obsession? What is an obsession? An obsession is a thought that pushes aside all thought to the contrary. When I am thinking about pizza or whatever, doesn't matter, no one is going to dissuade me. No one. I am locked in. And even while I'm eating it, it's still not enough. It's still not enough. And I see a lot of heads going up and down and up and down and up and down because it's not enough, because it doesn't transcend us into a spiritual awakening. It just takes the pain away for about 9-10 seconds. Let's continue. But there was always that curious mental phenomenon that parallel with our sound reasoning, there inevitably ran some insanely trivial excuse for taking that first drink. Our sound reasoning failed to hold us in check. The insane idea won out. Next day, we would ask ourselves in all earnestness and sincerity how it could have happened. In a normal person's brain, the intellectual will overshadow the emotional, except in certain situations. But 99% of the time, if they realize there's danger involved in doing this, they won't do it. In the addict mind, the emotional will overwhelm the intellectual. And the emotional is not to be explained by common sense. The emotional is, I want that pizza. I deserve that pizza. I'm going to have that pizza. And then the intellectual says, no, you're not. No, you're not. Because every time you eat pizza, you get fatter and fatter and fatter. And eventually the emotional will win out, and it will win the battle because I need that pizza. I demand that pizza. And then there's the worst thing of them all. I deserve that pizza. I deserve that pizza. I haven't had any pizza for 5 minutes. I've proven that I'm not a compulsive overeater. I've proven I'm healthy mentally. I'm going to eat the damn pizza. And I eat the pizza, and it triggers the physical allergy. So I eat all the pizza that's there, plus anything else that's not nailed down. And once again, I'm getting fatter and fatter and further away from the dreams and aspirations that I dare not have. I'm getting further away from everything that is good in life. And as the distance between one side of my belt and the other side of my belt is increasing, my health is decreasing, my chances at a normal life are decreasing, and I'm eating more and more and living less and less. And this disease will convince me that that is perfectly okay. It's a form of insanity. Don't kid yourself. Normal person, the intellectual says, don't eat. I was with people last night. I was with a bunch of friends last night. And one of my friends said something that was so outrageous to me, I couldn't believe my ears when she said, I better not have any more of that because dinner is coming and I don't want to spoil my appetite. Where does that come from? What do you mean, spoil my appetite? I could eat 7 dinners and order an 8th dinner and it wouldn't spoil my appetite. I don't know what planet this person's from. I've known her my whole life. I've known her since she was born. I've known her my whole life, and I don't understand what the hell she's talking about. She's a very thin girl, very thin. She's not a girl. She's 60. She's 62 years old. She's not a girl, but she's a grandmother. She just became a grandmother. I've been friends with her a long time. And I quote, I better not eat any more of that. I don't want to spoil my appetite for dinner. I'm thinking, what planet are you from? I've never said that in my life. Give me, and I want it now, or I want everybody dead. Everybody. Let's go to page 37. In some circumstances, we have gone out deliberately to get drunk. I've done that. Not drunk, but loaded on food. Feeling ourselves justified by nervousness, anger, worry, depression, jealousy, or the like. By my nature, I was a very jealous person. I still am by nature. It's only through this program that I'm less jealous, less scared, have less depression, less anger, less nervousness, because I have God in my life. And if you had a nice house, then I couldn't have one. If you had a nice whatever, car, girlfriend, whatever, then I couldn't have one. I saw the world as a very scarce place, that there was a very limited amount of wonderful things in the world. Now that I have God in my life, my world is very abundant. My world is ripe with possibilities. My world is a world where abundant resources and abundant miracles exist. I don't have to be that way anymore. Sometimes in my immaturity, I still choose it. Sometimes in my immaturity, I still choose it. But it's not a very recovered thing to be that scared, that nervous, that jealous, that angry, because we have steps for that. We have steps that are a proven workable method to not be that way. And yet sometimes in my tempestuous immaturity, I will still choose it. I never come out better off for it. It never works out for me. Never. Let's continue. But even in this type of beginning, we are obliged to admit that our justification for a spree was insanely insufficient in the light of what always happened. Do you notice a pattern here on page 36 toward the bottom of the page, which drinking always caused him? And here we have in the light of what always happened. Bill didn't want to leave any ambiguity here. He didn't want to say that what most of the time happened or what some of the time happened, what always happened. I've never eaten a pizza yet. I've never eaten a candy bar yet where I would get up the next morning and say, man, am I glad I ate that candy bar. Oh, that candy bar just hit the spot. I'm so happy I ate that candy bar. I've never had that thought. I've never eaten this food that I binged on and have been happy about it ever. I always had guilt and shame and remorse and fear. I never woke up and said, man, am I glad I ate that, whatever, fill in the blank. I've never had that experience. Never. Let's continue. We now see that when we began to drink deliberately instead of casually, there was little serious or effective thought during the period of premeditation of what the terrific consequences might be. I never thought of the consequences to my food. I never thought to myself, this is going to make me fatter. This is going to make me miserable. Why? Because I have a mental blank spot. The mental blank spot is the built-in forgetter. And the built-in forgetter means I cannot remember what the food does to me. I can only focus in on what the food does for me. And that candy bar, that whatever, is going to make me right again. It's going to make me right with the world. Everything is going to come up roses. I wasn't that conscious of it at all, but that's what happened because candy and pizza and all this crap, it made me feel great, but only for about 10 seconds. And then the horror, the nightmarish horror of what I have done is upon me. And I said the words that you've said many times, F it, I might as well finish the pizza. F it, I might as well finish the potato chips. F it, I might as well finish the candy. And that's it. And then tomorrow I'll go back on my diet. The reason I needed to finish that candy was because of the physical allergy. But in my mind, I needed some sort of justification because I didn't know about the physical allergy. No one told me that. No doctor told that to me. I certainly couldn't have stumbled on it until I came here. Our behavior is as absurd and incomprehensible with respect to the first drink as that of an individual with a passion, say, for jaywalking. That's why I have the jaywalker behind me today. He gets a thrill out of skipping in front of fast-moving vehicles. He enjoys himself for a few years in spite of friendly warnings. Now, what we're going to look at in the story of the jaywalker is the progressive nature of the disease, the fatal nature of the disease, and the permanent, progressive, and fatal. Right now, jaywalking is working for this guy. It says he gets a thrill out of skipping in front of fast-moving vehicles. He enjoys himself for a few years in spite of friendly warnings. I had a lot of friendly warnings. You're never going to get a girlfriend. You're never going to get a good job. The world won't accept you. You have to be thin. If you want to be on the baseball team, you have to be thin. If you want to do this, you have to be thin. I just kept getting fatter and fatter and fatter and fatter. Even though they were right, I knew they were right. I was tantruming with a knife and a fork because I didn't know how to live in the world. I didn't know how to do this. Not by myself, I didn't. But we're going to look at permanent, progressive, and fatal, and I'm going to help you. He enjoys himself for a few years in spite of friendly warnings. He's okay with the jaywalking. For a while, we're okay. Up to this point, you would label him as a foolish chap having queer ideas of fun. Luck then deserts him. Progressive. It's getting worse. Luck then deserts him, and he's slightly injured several times in succession. He's probably slowing down physically. He probably can't escape these cars anymore. He's not the fast runner he was. He's getting older now. Does that sound familiar? Because as I age and as I secrete less testosterone and I'm older and my metabolism is slowing down and various things in the body are changing, the disease gets worse and worse. It never stays the same and it never gets better. He's injured several times in succession. You would expect him, if he were normal, to cut it out. Stop right there. Everybody couldn't understand. Nobody could understand why I kept doing this to myself. I was an otherwise intelligent man. I was not stupid. I was nobody's fool. But when it came to food, there's no way my judgment could have been relied upon. There's no way my judgment could have carried me across that threshold into recovery. No way. The brain that causes the disease didn't cause the disease, but the brain that fostered the disease is not the brain that is going to get me out of it. I need God's help and I need sponsorship. I need people around me because a solitary self-appraisal proved insufficient. You can't fix a broken brain with a broken brain. Let's continue. You would expect him, if he were normal, to cut it out. Presently, he's hit again. Notice the progression of the disease. This isn't the first time he's been hit. He's hit again, and this time he has a fractured skull. Look at the progressive nature of the disease. Look at how it's progressing. Within a week after leaving the hospital, a fast-moving trolley car breaks his arm. He tells you he has decided to stop jaywalking for good, but in a few weeks, he breaks both legs. Again, the disease is getting worse and worse and worse and worse. It's not staying the same, is it? It's not getting any better, is it? He can't get scared straight. He leaves the hospital, and within a week, he's hit again. That means he's had plenty of close calls in that week. He never stopped jaywalking. He just stopped getting hit for 1 week, and he's back in the hospital. The disease is permanent, progressive, and if untreated, it is always fatal. He tells you he has decided to stop jaywalking for good. In other words, he's on a diet. He's now going to Weight Watchers. He's now going to Tops or Nutrisystem. But within a few weeks, he breaks both legs. So here he is. He has sworn to you he's going to stop. He's sworn that oath that Bill Wilson swore. He wrote in the Bible, "Lo, I'm not going to drink anymore." And he wrote that variations of that many times in their family Bible. You can see the family Bible at Stepping Stones in New York, in Katona, New York. You can see that Bible. And he writes in there, "Lo, John Barleycorn will not get the best of me in the coming year. I will stop drinking forever. I will not let you down. I will not hurt you or your folks," whatever that may be. But here the jaywalker, in a few weeks, he breaks both legs. He couldn't stop. I'm in page 38. On through the years, this conduct continues, accompanied by his continual promises to be careful or to keep off the streets altogether. Can I relate to the jaywalker? You bet I can. Look at how many times he's promising himself and others that he's going to keep off the streets altogether. He has a cerebral awareness that he is hurting himself, and he is making an oath that he's not going to do this anymore. Does that sound like Harlan? You bet your life that sounds like Harlan. That sounds exactly like me. I knew I was killing myself, but I couldn't stop on my own. There was no possible way. Finally, he can no longer work. His wife gets a divorce, progressive, and he is held up to ridicule, progressive. He tries every known means to get the jaywalking idea out of his head, progressive. He shuts himself up in an asylum, hoping to mend his ways, but the day he comes out, he races in front of a fire engine, which breaks his back. Such a man would be crazy, wouldn't he? You may think our illustration is too ridiculous, but is it? We who have been through the ringer have to admit if we substituted alcoholism for jaywalking, the illustration would fit us exactly. And if I took my life and put it into that jaywalker story, it fits it exactly. In every line of that story, the disease is getting worse and worse and worse and worse. However intelligent he may have been in other respects, where alcohol has been involved, we have been strangely insane. It's strong language, but isn't it true? Let's go back to Bill's story and let's take a peek at page 7. In Bill's story, in page 7, the end of the very first paragraph that begins with my brother-in-law, the very last sentence of that, or the last sentence is, I met a kind doctor who explained that though certainly selfish and foolish, I had been seriously ill bodily and mentally. That's the allergy and the twist of the mind. Let's just read the next sentence. It relieved me somewhat to learn that in alcoholics, the will is amazingly weakened when it comes to combating liquor, though it often remains strong in other respects. Let's go back to page 38. I want to talk to you for just a minute about me. I am not stupid. There are certain things I don't know. I didn't experience them, or I don't know because I just don't know them. I can't know everything. But I think that my intelligence level is at least normal average. I don't think I'm below average. Maybe that's my ego talking. I don't know. I've never administered an IQ test to myself. I have no idea. But I think that my level of intelligence is reasonably normal. I was always a good reader. I was good at social studies, history. I was good in English. Horrible at math. I mean, nightmarish at math. Art wasn't my favorite subject. Math, certain science, I was not really good at all, but I'm relatively normal. I made a mockery of my life because I had a disease that I did not understand. I just didn't understand what was going on with me. And even if I did, my intellect would be insufficient at combating it. My brain is not an adequate defense against the onslaught of this disease, and neither is yours. Neither is yours. It's not going to happen. You can't outthink this disease. You can't outfigure it out. You can't outsmart it, and you can't beat it. Your defense must come from a higher power. Let's continue. We're at the bottom of 38. Some of you are thinking, yes, what you tell us is true, but it doesn't fully apply. We admit we have some of these symptoms, but we have not gone to the extremes you fellas did, nor are we likely to, for we understand ourselves so well that after what you have told us, that such things cannot happen again. We have not lost everything in life through drinking, and we certainly do not intend to. Thanks for the information. Kishmir and Tochas. Kishmir and Tochas means kiss my butt. In other words, the attitude is, I get it, but I'm better. I get it, but I'm different. I get it, but somehow I'm different. What did we talk about many times in here? The ego has 3 jobs. 3 jobs. Make me right. Make me feel good right now. And make me different from other people. Make me different from you. You got all 3 right there. That the ego has given this disease full capacity, full permission to ransack me in every way you can defeat a person. It's going to make me different. It's going to make me right. And it's going to make me feel good right now. Nothing makes me feel as good right now as Chips Ahoy. Nothing. Nothing. Now, when we say, I don't intend to follow your path, you've already admitted defeat because you are already trying to control something you cannot control. And once you try to control something that you cannot control, it has already beat you. Say that again? Okay, I'll say it again. Once you try to control something that you cannot control, it has already beat you. The more effort you put at trying to control it, the weaker you are, and the more devastation that the disease will wrought upon your life. Let's take the next paragraph. That may be true of certain non-alcoholic people who, though drinking foolishly and heavily at the present time, are able to stop or moderate because their brains and bodies have not been damaged as ours were. I know people who, when they were in college, when we were younger, they drank liquor all the time. Where did they meet girls? They met girls at bars, mostly. You know, they sometimes met them in class or they met them at the job, but a lot of times they'd meet girls in bars. I even know of friends that I've had since childhood, not close friends. My group didn't do that, but I have people in my life that I could tell you, they used cocaine, they used, different LSD, and they used different drugs, different things, different concoctions, potions, whatever it was. Ludes were real big when I was younger. Quaaludes, they were huge when I was younger. I never did it, but I know a lot of people that did. And what happened with a lot of people, angel dust, that was another one that was made the rounds. Angel dust was a big barbiturate. Now it's fentanyl. I live across the street from a high school. I hate to tell you, once a month, they pull some, and this is a very wealthy high school. These are not schlump kids. These are not inner city kids. These are not anything like. This is a high school. I can't describe to you where I live over the phone here. I'm in a modest home, but I am in one of the wealthiest areas in the United States. There are homes within walking distance of my house that run for $4, $5, $6 million, $7 million. I'm in a very wealthy area, and Chaparral High School is right across the street from my house. Once a month, they pull some poor kid out of there, and I'll see one of the police or hey, what happened with that kid? 9 times out of 10, fentanyl. Fentanyl. Some of my friends, they didn't do fentanyl, but they did other things. Not my close friends, but they did other things. They don't go to those things today. They were not addicts in that sense. They were doing it recreationally, and it didn't ring their bell, as it were. So they don't do it now. They don't think about it now. I have a friend of mine in Chicago. He's a dentist. He was a dentist. He's retired. He did very well with ladies, but picked them mostly up in bars. Did a lot of drinking, did a lot of whatever he did. I don't want to go into the whole thing, but he's a very dear friend of mine. He hasn't had a drink in probably 40 years. He hasn't done a drug in 40 years. Never even thinks about it. It doesn't even occur to him. He was never addicted. He was just doing it. He was a heavy user or a moderate user. Doesn't even think about it anymore. I'm not that way with food. When it comes to food, I'm the real deal. I'm the real deal. I'm a compulsive overeater. I am not a heavy eater. I am not a moderate eater. I am a compulsive overeater. Let's continue. But the actual or potential alcoholic, with hardly an exception, will be absolutely unable to stop drinking on the basis of self-knowledge. Anybody here never go to the doctor and have the doctor say, if you keep eating like this, you're going to die? I doubt it. Nobody here ever heard from a doctor that this is because of your bulimia, or this is because of your obesity, or this is because of your anorexia. Nobody ever heard a doctor warn them that if they didn't change their behaviors, they're going to die. I sure did. And I was hearing that when I was a little kid. This is a point we wish to emphasize and re-emphasize to smash home upon our alcoholic readers as it has been revealed to us out of bitter experience. Let us take another illustration. Before we do Fred, which we're not going to probably do this week, Let's review what we have learned today because it's very important. This information is so important that most of you will not only forget it within 5 minutes of this session. This information is so important that if you just work the steps and teach this to other people, you just might live and you just might recover. Here's the information that we got today. Nothing that is of this earth is going to alter, slow down, or eradicate the disease of compulsive overeating. That no matter what I do or where I am, I don't mean geographically. I'm in Arizona, you're not, or whatever. But the bottom line is, no matter where I am in my program, I could be sponsoring the Fifth Army. If I don't keep doing more recovering work, and I don't expand and enlarge my spiritual life through service and self-sacrifice for others, I am going to die in the food from this disease. The disease is permanent. It does not go away. The disease is progressive. It keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse, no matter what I do. And if untreated, this disease is fatal, permanent, progressive, and fatal. And the jaywalker is a brilliant illustration of constantly getting worse and worse, worse and worse. Let's take Fred. We do have more time than I thought. Let's take Fred, and this is the real story of Harry Brick. And Harry Brick, he wrote a story in the first edition of the big book called A Different Slant. And Harry Brick will eventually get drunk again in his life. But what's important to remember about the story of Fred is we always think of this disease as spawning from misfortune. Oh, this went bad for me and that went bad for me, and I had a horrible experience with this, or I had a horrible experience with that, and that's why I ate compulsively. This story is going to tell us that sometimes what happens is we are having good fortune and we can destroy ourselves with good fortune as easily or easier than when things go wrong. Let's go to the middle of 39. Fred is a partner in a well-known accounting firm. That means he's making a very nice living. His income is good. He has a fine home, is happily married, and the father of promising children of college age. He has so attractive a personality that he makes friends with everyone. If ever there was a successful businessman, it is Fred. To all appearance, he is a stable, well-balanced individual, yet he is alcoholic. I like Fred. Fred seems like he's a good guy, but he's an alcoholic. Make no mistake about that. We first saw Fred about a year ago in a hospital where he had gone to recover from a bad case of jitters. It was his first experience of this kind, and he was much ashamed of it. Far from admitting he was an alcoholic, remember the ego says, I'm different. He told himself he came to the hospital to rest his nerves. I see lots of nerve resters in OA. They're here auditing the class. They're not doing anything. They go to meetings and they listen and go home. And on the way home, they stop off for God knows what. I see lots of auditors and nerve resters in OA today. I was one for a long time. Thank God I'm not anymore. The doctor intimated strongly that he might be worse than he realized. For a few days, he was depressed about his condition. He made up his mind to quit drinking altogether. In other words, he's going on a diet. It never occurred to him that perhaps he could not do so, in spite of his character and standing. Fred would not believe himself an alcoholic, which means he's not taking step one, much less accept a spiritual remedy for his problem. If he doesn't take one, he's not going to take two. We told him what we knew about alcoholism. In other words, the allergy of the body and the twist of the mind. He was interested and conceded that he had some of the symptoms. In other words, I'm a little alcoholic, but I'm not quite like you guys. But he was a long way from admitting he could do nothing about it himself. In other words, I've got this. That's the chorus of the disease. I've got this. I can handle this myself. I've been to enough meetings now. I can figure it out. I've got the food plan. I'm losing weight. I'm going to handle this myself. I don't need the meetings. I don't need a sponsor. I don't need the steps. I can do this on my own. That is the choral, that is the chorus of every disease in its active form in the world. I don't need this. I can do this on my own. What is it about our psyche? What is it about our brain? What is it about our ego that knows there's help available in the rooms, and we refuse out of fear? We refuse out of this individualism that the ego is emanating, that we can do this on our own. Why would you want to? Why would you want to? You have a whole world of recovering people here who want to help you, who want to be in your God squad. Why do you insist? And I don't know why, because I did it myself for a long time. I knew there was help here. I didn't want to come. I was afraid. I didn't want to be here because I was ashamed and I was afraid. And I knew I couldn't do this on my own, but that's the lie I told myself, that I'm going to just do this on my own. Horse hockey. Horse hockey. Let's finish the paragraph. He was positive that his humiliating experience, plus the knowledge he had acquired, would keep him sober the rest of his life. Self-knowledge would fix it. Horse hockey. Self-knowledge isn't going to fix any of it. Not today, not tomorrow, not anytime is self-knowledge going to fix this. I must have a higher power. I must have a sponsor. I must work the steps. I must work with others. I must expand and enlarge my spiritual life through service and self-sacrifice for others. This is not a disease that's going to go away because you want it to. This is not a disease that's going to go away because it should and you don't deserve it. This is not a disease that's going to go away when your wife or your husband or your brother or your employer do this or that or whatever it is. No, it doesn't work that way. It works when you work it, and it works when God comes into your life through the steps. Now, before I turn this back over to Dottie, I just want to remind you, next week, I'll be in Arlington Heights, right by Poop Park. I will have a penthouse view of Poop Park. And if you've never seen Poop Park, you have got to see it, because they have the cutest collection of dogs in Arlington Heights. They all come there to do their business, and it is the cutest thing in the world. They all come, and I love dogs. I've had dogs. So, I've had dogs most of my adult life, and I will be right by Poop Park in Arlington Heights. Now, next week, this meeting will begin at 7:30 a.m. Pacific time, 9:30 a.m. Central Time, and 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. We're going to start off on page 40. We heard no more of Fred for a while. I just want to remind you of that. And July 12th, 13th, and 14th in Phoenix, Arizona, we are going to have an old-fashioned big book retreat. We're going to work the steps. We're going to laugh together. We're going to cry together. We're going to expand your God squad. we're going to gossip about anyone that's not there. So if you're not there, no, we're going to talk behind your back. So get there so we can't do it. See, that's why I'm trying to encourage you to come. For information on this upcoming retreat, go to oaphoenix.org. oaphoenix.org. I see Diane T's hand is up. Before I turn it over to you, Dottie, I'm going to give it to Diane T, and then we'll turn it into questions and answers. No math, no food, no math, no food. All right, Diane, what do you got for us?
Hey, everybody, Harlan, happy 70th birthday.
Thank you.
Okay, so a lot of you were able to come last week. That's great, to the sponsorship training webinar. It was recorded, and once the virtual region is done editing it, it will be available on the ScottsdaleBigBookStudy.com website, as well as the virtual region website and the Westchester United Intergroup website. I cannot give you an exact timeline because the virtual region digital editor is still finishing work from our convention. And when she's done with that, she'll do this, and then you'll all know about it lickety split. Because the powers that be kept me from having a break during our sponsorship webinar. I didn't get to say the seventh tradition till just about the last few minutes. I'm going to put in the chat for those of you who care to make a contribution to the virtual region, especially because the virtual region coughed up money to make this event happen. Thank you. I'll also put my contact info in the chat if anybody has a question. Thank you.
Thanks, Diane. Thank you very much. Okay, Dottie, let's do Q&A.